Hey, how are you doing? Much appreciated.
Are they different
go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the last meeting of the year. Probably one of my longest, right? Maybe. Yeah. Figure it out. Before we get started with, moving on the agenda, let's go ahead and stand in our nation with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. All right, we'll turn it over now to Amanda Foster.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You have a pretty robust agenda for a meeting. I'm going to just mention the rough timeframe so that everybody has set expectations of what we plan for in terms of time. It's obviously your meeting, and you can take as much time as you like. The first item that we'll come to is the Peak Plan 2055 update. And we have put aside about 55 minutes for that item. The next item is the Community Readiness Plan update in action. That is around 20 minutes. Then next will be our capital improvement plan overview. We put 45 minutes for that item. And then our last item of the day is the construction contract award for Salem Streetscaping. And we put about 30 minutes for that item. So on that schedule, that takes us from 3:30 to 6. It's your time, but that's kind of our rough timeline and our presentation for that time frame as well. With that, if you're ready to jump in, okay, I'll turn it over to Shannon and we'll get started.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to keep my part really short and ask our consultant team to join me, who's leading the Peak Plan 2055. Our lead consultant is Meg Nealon. We have Ben Hitchings and Matt Winchester with us today. And just one request, in the interest of trying to keep us on time, we really appreciate if questions could be held till the end of their presentation. They have a time set aside. That. Okay.
Thank you. Hey, Shannon. So good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for the time on your agenda today to go through this. I will tell you that before we even start, we do have many slides, which hopefully you've had a chance to review those. So we're going to go through them fairly quickly and mention some highlights as we go along. We do ask that you hold questions for the end because we've got a fun discussion section at the end. And then at your seats, you have index cards sitting above your yellow pads. Those are there so as you listen to our presentation and think about maybe it's questions or things that occur to you pertaining to the process or anything you're seeing in the presentation, jot those down because if we're not able to get to everything today, we'd love to be able to collect those and bring them back with us and know where your heads are on just receiving the information today. So again, I'll move quickly through this. Our agenda is to do a little bit of introduction. We'll talk a little bit about the project overall, a little bit about stakeholder engagement and tie that to what's happening in the planning area today. And then Matt will share with you a little glimpse into the scenario planning. And we'll wrap up with our next steps and then we'll do our way forward wisdom, which hopefully will be fun. So with that, quick introductions. Matt Newhester and I are co-leading this process for the consultant team, which is made up of 5 firms. We are based in the Carolinas, have extensive experience in comprehensive planning in the Carolinas and a lot of places throughout the U.S. We are joined by Green Heron Planning. Ben is representing Green Heron Planning this evening. Stantec is also part of our team, dealing with a lot of the infrastructure, transportation in particular, and Arnett Muldrow is our market analyst, so demographic, housing, and all things economy. So that's a very brief overview of who we are. So let's talk a little bit about the project. So Ben, you want to explain a little bit about the details of the project?
Yeah. So a comprehensive plan is a chance to kind of step back and really think about where you want to head as a community and then chart a pathway to move you in that direction. And so we have a wonderful chance to do both a comprehensive plan and a transportation plan together. Certainly, as we know, there's so much synergy between land use and infrastructure. And so these will update your plans that you did in 2019. And we have a requirement now for communities that want to use the powers of zoning. They have to have an updated comprehensive plan. So this helps y'all comply with that as well as helping you achieve the goals that you have for your community. We have we're a modified Dillon's rule state here in North Carolina. And so we're granted powers from the General Assembly down to local governments to manage land use in the community. We have now all of those planning statutes consolidated in Chapter 160D. And the plans here in North Carolina, as we know, are really policy guides. They're a touchstone to help you make decisions and keep that community-wide perspective in mind as you are faced with different kinds of choices. So they are not legally binding. Your development standards, your Unified Development Ordinance is really the law set of laws that really guides the development and the land use process and what is allowed on different properties. Of course, once you do an updated plan, you want to update your development standards to make those consistent with the updated vision in the plan. We also have the chance to use public investment as we reach into our toolbox of local government techniques to implement the plan. So the public investment choices in community facilities and infrastructure are an important way to advance the plan, and also the programs that you might develop as well coming out of a plan update. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, so we're conducting this process over a three-phase process. And so we have taken a deep dive in the discovery phase, which is the first one, and we're moving into the second phase. So as we do that, we also want to point out ways that both the task force and the town council are interacting with us throughout the process. I think it's important to keep you abreast of what's going on, but also get your input along the way. So this is the first of one of those. You can see we're leaving phase one and moving into phase two. And today we'll give you a little bit of a glimpse into the data synthesis we've been conducting and the input and how those two things pair. As Ben said, there are three products of this process. So typically we're doing a comprehensive plan that would have a transportation plan or a transportation element within it. In this case, we're doing that as an extra piece, and there's a 55 corridor study within that. So that shapes up structurally to look something like this as a transportation plan is being brought out as a special piece. As we go through this process, we're going to be looking at a fairly large geography. So this map shows our planning area. So we're calling it the peak planning area throughout the process. It does include everything in the corporate limits and the extraterritorial jurisdiction. When you see the area in the lighter blue on the outside, as we go towards Chatham County and towards the southwest, that is an extra area of Wake County jurisdiction that we are also including because overall we want to be looking at an area that Apex is currently has planning and zoning and jurisdiction in today, but also there's potential for growth of Apex in those directions. So we want to be paying attention to the places where Apex could grow and or have influence in the future. So we're just over 30,000 or nearly 32,000 acres in the planning area. The stakeholder engagement started at the very beginning of the process. It's a multifaceted process that has both in-person and online activities. One of the things we try to do with a process like this is recognize people's different communication styles. We also want to make sure that it's flexible enough that people can fit it into their schedules and respond to the various things that come forward during the process in a way that's suitable for them. So you'll see all of these tools are part of our process that are captured in an engagement plan we did early on in the process. The key to this is the website. So if you haven't been to that yet, we encourage you to do that. It's the place that most people will go, one, to find out what activities are coming up, two, to find out what information is being disseminated, especially draft documents that they might want to see and have an opinion of. And then third, ways to communicate. So the survey is posted. There are other mechanisms for communicating with staff and the project team through the process is also there. So that's kind of a one-stop shop. That there are lots of other activities and tools that are being employed to make sure that people have opportunities to be engaged through the process. An early deliverable in this process was a flyer that's the size of a postcard that we started using pretty quickly that invited people to the process, gave them away through an invitation to the website to get involved, and also had Spanish translation on the back. So with the help of our task force and a bunch of other partners, we've been able to get that out into the community. So that was one piece of communication that was helpful. A wider variety of outreach activities have also been in play. So when you see the The list here, you're seeing both online activities and some tangible in-person types of activities, even some special events, newsletters, utility bill inserts, those kinds of things. So we're looking at a wide variety of mechanisms that can get the process in front of folks and invite them to be part of the process. The major activities that we've conducted in phase one, forming the task force with your help, of course. So we've got a great group assembled to participate that way throughout the process. We've had focus groups, about 50 people participated in those topical discussions. We've had more than 7, probably 8 or 9 by now, with folks giving us input on specific topics that they are most familiar with and shed light on those topics that we would not be able to see just from looking at plans or just observing the community. So that was really helpful. We conducted public forum. One of those sessions was in this room, and we did another one out at the Hope Church, and had a total of 106 people participate that way. Not surprisingly, we got more participation through the survey, because that's how most people participate these days, but we were happy to see numbers in both of those realms. So we've got a lot of great input from the folks that participated. We also tracked their locations. So you see on the left in Forum 1 and the survey on the right, a lot of people from zones 8, 9, 10, 11 weighed in on the various questions we were asking. So it's kind of that swath from the Chatham County edge into your downtown area. So hopefully as we go through this process, we will hear from more, but those are where your growing areas are. A lot of your population's concentrated in those areas. So that's not surprising to us either. From all of that input, and it was a lot, hopefully you all had a chance to look at the survey that was downloaded. But from that, we have identified 6 major themes that capture the nature of the input that we're getting from the surveying forum. So those are growth and balance, housing, quality of life and place, mobility, public infrastructure and services, and the environment. So with the next set of slides, we're going to walk you through some of those details. Again, just hitting the highlights for now and touching on some of the input that we've received through those mechanisms. And we're going to start off, and I'll hand back to Ben.
Thanks, Meg. So I'm going to cover the first 3 of those themes, and then Meg will cover the next 3. So our first one is growth and balance. Here, of course, we're talking about the type of growth, the amount of growth, the location of the growth. Those were big topics of interest. That's no surprise to y'all. One thing I will say as we go through these data, you have many insights from living and working and leading in this community. So we don't pretend to be telling you anything that you don't know here, but just sharing what we've heard and what we've seen in the data. Of course, another big topic was the opportunity to try and capture some more non-residential development, both for tax-based purposes, also to have more jobs in the community, to try and reduce commuting, and also to provide more services in the community. So those were some sub-themes under this heading. Now, we had nearly half of the survey respondents identify this topic of population growth is a key issue for the town. Again, no surprise, based on how fast you can grow. Now, I will say we just had a typo here. This is really 71%. That's how much you grew between 2010 and 2020. We know it's been a dizzying rate of growth for y'all, a dizzying pace of change in the community. And so not surprisingly, many residents are locked in on that. Another topic is the amount of land dedicated to different uses. Again, now these data are for the entire planning area. So this is not just your incorporated limits, but also your extraterritorial jurisdiction and land out in the unincorporated parts of the county that are sort of within Apex's purview. So the single largest land use in that area is residential development. You can see, so that then sort of is reflected again in that brown bar on the top, the amount of developed land. But one thing I want to note for you, of course, is that you also have a significant amount of undeveloped land at about 15–16%. And you have a significant amount of land that we consider underdeveloped. That's where the land value is greater than the structure value. For us, that's often an indicator that those sites are ripe for redevelopment if the property owner would like. All of that sort of helps to establish the land supply that's available for change in the upcoming years. Of course, the development, much of your land is developed and unlikely to change. And so that's important to note as well. All right, now let's move on to housing. Y'all have done a really extensive job with your updated housing plan. We know that the range of housing types is a huge issue. The affordability of housing in the community is a huge issue. We've got both legacy neighborhoods with longstanding residents, in some cases on fixed incomes, trying to, stay in their home even as land values and property prices are increasing. We've got folks who are trying to age in place in the community. And so there's some accessibility issues with those topics. And also you have a lot of families and younger folks in the community as well. And so not surprisingly, we see an interest in a variety of kinds of housing. That's what we would anticipate in a dynamic community such as this. Note also that about half of our survey respondents would like to see future residential development occur as infill on underutilized land in existing developed areas. So that's an interesting point to take note of. You also have a lot of that housing stock, because so much of your growth has happened in the last 15 years, 20 years. A lot of that housing stock is fairly new. And this is, I think, really an interesting stat. 2/3 of your housing stock was built since 2000. You've got a lot of housing stock that's fairly recently put in place. You'll note also the median home value were over $500,000. We know that a challenge is that creates for folks who would like to own their own home. Also, you're at almost $1,700 for the median rent. So definitely some affordability challenges here, just like throughout the triangle. And this is actually, quite honestly, a national problem with not enough production in the housing sector over the last 20 years. All right, let's talk a little bit about quality of life. So one of the things that we heard in the surveys and the public engagement was folks love your community and they want to keep finding ways to make it even better. And so for them, that means more public facilities like parks and community centers. Something that we found very interesting was the desire for places to gather. You've got about 20% of your population that's working out of the home. And so it's not surprising perhaps that people are looking for places to connect with others in the community, those so-called third places. We also have of course, there's always an interest in safety. Y'all have wonderful investments in that area, and also cultural resources, both protecting the natural assets and developing the cultural assets of the community. That's reflected again in the public involvement. Nearly 60% of respondents said they'd like to see more parks and recreation. You're getting close to 40% who'd like to see more community centers or public gathering space. You're building on a wonderful set of investments that y'all have made in recent years. You've got this tremendous town campus with the senior center, rec center, town hall, et cetera, a wonderful asset. You've got 500 acres of parkland. Some of that is coming in the form of the fingers of Jordan Lake and the Jordan Lake Recreation Area, as well as the investments that y'all have made as a municipality. You've got 13 miles of trails in the community, got connections to other, the evolving trail system in Wake County, even extending up the Durham with the American In cultural resources, again, you've made some longstanding investments. You have your wonderful sculpture walk, of course, every year. And you've got a busy event staff involved in more than 50 events every year. And then you also have some interesting opportunities to continue to accentuate and develop cultural activities and public art and the like, not only in downtown, but throughout the community. With that, turn it over to you.
Okay, so one of the things that we're looking at in this process, it's not typical in every comprehensive plan process, but social isolation is something that is really emerging as a real problem across communities throughout the U.S. and frankly around the world. So as part of this process, we're not just looking at community facilities and the amenities and services, but we're looking at ways that even with private spaces, a combination offer opportunities for people to connect, but also feel that sense of belonging. Like, is this a place that Apex really that supports that need to feel that they're part of the community, right? As we look at all the elements of the plan, we're looking at 5 dimensions of social infrastructure to see how some of these things relate. So those 5 dimensions are housing and neighborhood form, how connected they are, how what are people's opportunities to find their home and be connected to the areas around them. Access to amenities, third places, and programming. You have a lot, and we heard through the public input that people really love the parks, the community centers, and all the programming that happens. So that's a real plus. Connectivity and mobility, a little bit of a challenge there, but comparatively, you're in sort of a moderate stage. So we're looking at metrics around that that can hinder people's ability to get out and be part of the community. Culture and arts, you continue to expand that and expand it. So the range of cultures that are supported here and celebrated are certainly part of that, but the arts also is a way for people to connect with the community. So that is another piece that we're looking at, and you're building that as well. Environmental quality and safety was a really big one. That kept coming up. Natural resources, ability to get out into the open space and enjoy it is a big one. And people's sense of well-being is also tied to that. So we're looking at this, and as we go through the process, we're going to be examining each of the elements of the plan and looking a little bit closer at each one to see how some of these things can be addressed through improvements over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Mobility, on that note, about connectivity, this is a big one. So congestion and safety really top the list, but you can see from this list, there are a lot of other things people are mentioning. If you were looking at the comments in the survey specifically, you saw a range of these topics pop up as well. So with that, we were asking questions of folks who came to the forum and through the survey, the kinds of things that they were most concerned about. So they were able to identify for us at a deeper level, where are the areas of concern, where are the places that they experience congestion or have feelings of being unsafe and they're traveling around. But one of the things that popped out is in their top 3, more facilities that they'd like to see are the things that really contribute to the comfort of the facilities they're using to move around, not just the streets, but non-motorized. So the walking, the biking, and so on. So those came up, greenways and sidewalks and street trees. Again, 92%, it ranked #1 in the survey. Congestion is what people rate as in their top 3. We also asked people about the 55 corridor specifically, because we're going to be looking at more depth, coinciding with the NCDOT project. And the enhancements that people are looking for really are targeting the ways that pedestrians can move around. So crossings, crosswalks, grade separated crossings, things like that. And then the complementary set of facilities such as greenways and how those connected to the sidewalk system all came up. So as we look at 55, we're going to be looking for ways to connect development and connect people to it and around that area on both sides. We see this with these facilities that we introduced through improvements as opportunities for partnership with private sector, for example, of how those facilities get delivered through the street improvements and the redevelopment process. We're looking at traffic volumes. The only thing I'm going to point out here is you've got some local roads that are carrying traffic, north of 20,000 that are rivaling your real highways around here too. So that's a lot of traffic that a few roads are carrying. We're also seeing some crash frequency. 6 of those intersections are carrying most of those injury-related crashes. So that's an important thing for us to be looking at. This map kind of shows graphically where those hot spots are that we need to be looking at and how development might relate to those improvements there. In addition to transportation, other infrastructure and services we're looking at, all of this is expanding with the growth that you're experiencing. I think the main message we got from the public input was some of this really needs to be ahead of growth or with it, which is challenging. So you're not unlike any other community, and that we're all looking for ways to anticipate that growth and figure out what's the next thing we need to do to support what's coming in so that you are mitigating, minimizing the impacts of that growth as it relates to infrastructure. We asked folks about some of the things that fall under that heading of public services and infrastructure that the town is delivering, and trying to understand people's appetite for that relative to certain patterns of development. For example, low density spreading development is much harder to deliver feasibly infrastructure and services when you have a low density pattern. So we asked this question, what's important to you? And given those choices, people are gravitating to those services and infrastructure that you're seeing on the two sides of the scale. So as we get into that some more, we're going to test more of those trade-offs in our scenario planning to see if those are resonating with folks. I mentioned the expansion of some of these services. A lot of these are good in the near term, but the town and its partners are already looking out into the future and thinking about what kinds of things are going to be needed in the future. Water supply is one of those things. So that's already being examined for how to deal with the growth that's coming to this part of the triangle. The environment, save this for last because this is the one that probably got the most discussion. Every single question we asked folks, somewhere in there, somebody said something about how important the natural environment is, the open space, preserving it, conserving it, and being able to enjoy it and make it part of the development pattern that as development continues, that's something we need to be sensitive to. Tree canopy in particular came up a lot. So we're listening to that and paying attention to that. We asked people their favorite natural places so we could get a sense of what they associate with as good natural areas. But 51% put the natural environment in the top 3 features to protect over the next 20 to 30 years. So again, something else to be paying attention to. You do have a lot of really great natural resources, natural assets here. So recognizing those and understanding how those can be conserved even as development continues, we can elevate those and test those ideas in the scenario planning map we'll tell you about. So again, just 6 topics that we were able to put all of that input under. So you may see more, but that's where our focus is right now. I do want to remind you that when we think about developing a plan for a community, it's really important that we get that public input, but it's just one input. So with the 3 legs of the stool, actually, this physical and the market environment we've been examining too, that's the data of your current circumstances that point us in a certain direction, and then the best practices. Having seen a lot and worked in a lot of places all around the country, we're seeing some things happening in the realm of development and conservation that we can offer up as ideas. So that combination is what starts to shape the ideas that will surface in the scenario plan. So just a thought about that. And with that, I'll hand it over to Matt.
Excuse me, thank you. Megan mentioned in the beginning that phase 1 was discovery, phase 2 is more development. We just wanted to quickly highlight for you or spotlight for you this scenario planning concept. Give you a chance starting today, start to put your fingerprints on this process, and then continue with this all the way through February, what I'm about to describe. So really what we're trying to do is make more informed decisions about our future. So if this were 20 years ago, you would have a comprehensive plan where we take one mission, one theme, and then try to educate and sort of defend it along the way. We're by definition looking at multiple futures side by side. As you can imagine in the phase 1 activities, we heard a lot of stuff. Some of it might have been conflicting. Some of it had different new ideas that we weren't even thinking about. And so by scenario planning, we're allowed to make more informed decisions about our future. So we're going to look at multiple futures side by side. And so that's really going to start with the heart of it being a map. So while we're going to have a lot of stuff I'm going to share with you, the map is the heart of what we're doing for the different scenarios. And that map then makes it into the comprehensive plan is the heart of the plan. Everything else kind of falls off of that, the recommendations, the infrastructure, all of that kind of stuff. We'll be looking at then what are the effects. So the map might create demand for services, and we'll be looking at the supply and how we might meet those needs in the future. So as we mentioned, all I can promise you today is that the beginning, the existing conditions report, the public engagement, those kind of things, we all have the same starting point. We have the same ending point, which will be the map that makes it into the draft document. We have a lot of flexibility for how we do things between there and there, between the beginning and the end. And we'll take different paths with different futures as we go through this process. So if you've ever been like, I really wondered if we ever doubled our open space, or if we tried transit in this area or whatever, this is the time to ask those questions. Because we can look at sort of what that means for your future and your path forward in this process. It's not going to be a discrete choice when we come up with those futures. Ultimately, we're going to get to a preferred scenario. That scenario would take the strengths of the different things we looked at. On purpose, we're going to push things sometimes to the extreme so we can learn lessons. Once we learn those lessons, we'll come back to a preferred. And again, take the strengths of each of the different features that we looked at. So how will the scenarios be the same? You've seen all kinds of maps that have a planning area boundary. We're going to look at that entire planning area boundary as part of our process. Also, the committed development, right now, our cutoff is December 8th of this year. If you have a wild rezoning or something early next year, let us know. But we will be able to have the same committed development. So the stuff that's already approved but hasn't come out of the ground yet will be the same for all the scenarios. So we recognize the efforts and investments that have been made. Those existing development patterns that they talked about earlier, we're going to recognize that those are in place, and we have to honor what they are and where they are at. And then also the open space. We'll be looking at that as well. This isn't just a development exercise. We're looking at the balance between development and open space. And then how are they different? So we'll be looking at different combinations of land uses, intensities, infrastructure, open space strategies, and make combinations of those things to try to see what does it mean for your future as Apex if you go down one path or the other. Again, being able to make a more informed decision and get feedback to some of those what if questions you've been asking. So when I've had to explain this concept before, this is sort of what I've settled on. So we have different ingredients. We have recipes with those ingredients, and then I will serve the meals for you. So with the ingredients, it might be transit, housing, the environment, all those kind of just the things of a town and those pieces that make a whole. Then we take those pieces, those ingredients, and I will make different combinations with them to create stories. And then those stories will be served for reactions in our next public forum. So what influences that? So in terms of the ingredients, we have different goal statements that are being created, again, out of all the good work that's been presented already. The engagement summary, so not just the numbers, but the stories around the numbers. The existing conditions report that continues to be built has a lot of good stuff to mine out of it. And then even starting tomorrow with our task force, we want to get their fingerprints all over this thing. So we're going to have a discussion with them about this. Once you have those different ideas and things, I'm working now with town staff to sort of see where the compass points. But then tomorrow, again, in our meeting with the task force, we're going to get them to influence where this goes in terms of different futures. Ultimately, our goal is to bring back more information in February to the public. And it'll look something like this, hopefully standing room only, but we will go through different futures. And so if you see up in the top right, almost like a fortune teller, I'm going to basically say, if we take this combination of assumptions, this is what you might expect to live, work, and visit Apex. And then, okay, get that in your mind, go to the next station. This will be a different future that you might follow. There'll be different combinations, and we'll be getting feedback in real time as we go. So we have to sort of put goalposts on these things. And so right now we have these sort of goal phrases, statements, however you want to put it. These are evolving, but just so you know, these are kind of things we're trying to look at, whether it's intentional development, intentional open space preservation, all the way down the list, hitting the things and the topics that Meg and Ben have already presented to you. And then ultimately, sort of if you're looking at where the inertia is or where things are being drawn to, this is the easiest concept I've been able to come up with. So if you look at the vertical axis on the bottom, do you want to remain sort of a more dispersed, lower density type community, or do you want to become more dense and more compact in very strategic locations, maybe to support transit or maybe to support an employment node or cluster? So that's one way we'll look at it. And then east, sort of left to right, we'll say, well, do you want to become or remain just the model thriving residential community with everything that comes with that from a quality of life perspective? Or all the way on the right, you want to look at maybe attracting more jobs and balancing tax base and those kind of things as well. So those are sort of the pushes and pulls that we're looking at. And the reason we're presenting today for you is to see what you might have. And again, if you're like, I've always wondered this, this is your chance to ask a question. Let us put some data around it and give you some feedback. So if you have any ideas that pop in, share them with Shannon and Diane. They'll get them to us and we'll make sure that we try to honor some of that stuff in this scenario. So keep the comments coming. Otherwise, we will see you in February with the scenario concepts presentation. We have a computer model, we'll have a lot of numbers and things that are generated as well as the stories around them. We'll be able to compare these things side by side. You can start to see what are the trade-offs of some of the things you've been talking about as a plan. So we'll see you in February.
So you've probably seen in your packet some of the things to expect in the near future. So we will have a task force meeting tomorrow night, our second one, and they will have this virtually the same presentation. We'll be able to get into that discussion and evaluate those goal statements you were just seeing. The products that you'll see soon, an existing conditions report, phase 1 engagement summary after the new year, and the draft goals with input from the committee, they will go through the second forum as drafts still, because we want the community to see them and weigh in on as well. But they're still being used as our guideposts. We will do a 55 corridor workshop where we can get real-time information to stakeholders and staff and sort through some ideas. The scenario development will be going on, and then forum 2 is we're targeting the end of the year, beginning of March for that. So look forward to that. But that's the lineup, and that brings us to the whiteboard wisdom. Do you have fun?
Sure. I feel like we need special music or a drum roll. This is a chance for you to share a key thought that you have. As Meg mentioned already, y'all have the note cards, so you can write other questions that you might have down on those, and we'll collect those and factor those into our work. But here, with our whiteboard wisdom activity, we ask that you pick one key thought or question. And then write it down. I've got dry erase pens. Please only use the dry erase pen so we don't permanently mark these up. And then you'll have a chance to go around and each share your thought or question or insight with the group and your little pearl of wisdom that you put on your whiteboard. So here we go. Let's see. Sorry, Sue. Coming over here. Here we go. And we've got the driver.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you. We'll come back. Again, just one thought. Try and write it fairly large so that it's visible. We'll take photographs at the end, and we'll go around and give each of you a chance to share what you've written on your whiteboard. So we'll give you a minute to think about what you'd like to share with the group. Again, it could be a question, a key observation, an insight, a data point, something you've always wondered, or something you really noted that you think is a key consideration from the materials that Meg, Matt, and I have shared. Yep. Remember, ready, Councilmember Moon? Would you like to go first?
Yeah.
Or I can start somewhere else. Okay, here we go.
Here's my main question.
There we go. Yeah.
So this area is not going to get any less. So
people will continue to move there, right? And so there's a lot of talk about like how do we control growth, how do we keep maintain our natural resources, how, so in other words, how do we manage the growth that will come? But instead of trying to reinvent the wheel here, what can we learn from other high growth areas, not only in this country, but also internationally? And so I'm looking for your expertise as consultants to help us with that. You know, what have we seen in Austin or the Atlanta area, or, you know, some of these, other developing nations that, you know, may be more advanced on the public transit and things like that, right? And so what can we use to create our plan now, right? So that we don't try to retrofit the road into an existing infrastructure, right? Talk about bicycle lanes, right? It would have been a lot better if we had designed our roads with bicycle lanes in mind from the outset, right? Instead of trying to strike now, right? And then, you know, creating constriction on, you know, the limited right of ways that we have, right? And so what can we learn from other areas that might include our plan and our.
And mostly we won't try and respond to each of your comments. I will say, we have an extensive inventory of places we visited, observed, both domestically and internationally. And we will be drawing on all of that as we carry out the work of the plan and partner with your staff and the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Mahat.
All right, we good? Okay, so I wrote, how do we ensure all voices in the community are represented? And kind of a related observation of balancing local versus townwide views on some of these topics. And by that, I mean, voices being represented. A lot of these like surveys, the workshops they have, it's a self-selected set of people who come to them, who may have very strong feelings, but they don't necessarily represent the majority of the community. So how can we ensure that the views that we're receiving, what we're making decisions on is based on the entire community and not a self-selected group, which is an important group, but it's not everybody. And likewise, and when I look through your presentation, a lot of stuff people want, right? Whether it's new parks and open space or indoor stuff, that has to go somewhere. And it sounds good in theory to build a bunch of stuff, but when you go to the map, you have to put in a stripe with a certain color for a new business. That's going to be near somebody else, and they're going to say, no. Like, what I want that has to be a park for that. You know, there'll be a conflict there once things get real. And we'll get to a point, I believe, where we'll be balancing sort of the high level goals that we have that everyone kind of agrees on in abstract versus the practical implications of taking a marker and drawing a map a certain color and what that means for that area.
Yeah, that underscores the reason we do the scenario planning. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
So mine is, 2055, the future. I was just curious, as far as communication and looking at how youth involved in the process and as there's been intentional about involving them in the creative way.
Yeah.
So, right.
Great, and you have a great youth council.
Yeah.
We were really impressed with the numbers of how they participate and volunteer in the community. So they're on our list to explore some ideas with them and tap into them for idea generation. Yeah.
And they're represented on the peak plan task force.
A topic of conversation that's been, I'd say a strong one within the council for a while has been the idea of rebalancing our residential versus commercial development. I'd like to get an answer to the question of whether or not that's really what we should be doing. I mean, I think traditionally we tend to want to say, let's increase our economic footprint so that we can better balance the tax balance. But some questions that come to mind immediately is this a feasible option? Is it something that we should be pursuing? Are we running away from something that's an actual strength? I don't know the answer. I mean, I know where I'd like to end up, but I don't know whether or not that's the right direction. So that, it seems like a question that is a valid one to ask, which is, okay, do we need to increase our commercial side of things, or are we going to just stick around with basically being a bedroom community?
Right. It's a good question. And, the jobs and tax base surfaced a little bit in the input, not overwhelmingly. So we're going to explore that a bit too. So we had that same question.
And I will say, it does take, when you've got an existing community that's a decent size, it takes a lot to move the needle. But we'll definitely, this is a very important question we often get, so we'll definitely look into that. All right, you ready?
So, I'll speak first, if you don't mind, to this, and then a quick comment on Edward. Yeah. Really appreciate all of the comments so far. I'm glad that I didn't totally do input. Mayor Pro Tem, happy was talking about, I'll get to that in a second, but my question essentially was, or essentially my point that I'm pondering is how to reconcile the public input on affordable housing and open space. And this speaks to one of my favorite, urban planning means, if there are such things. I don't know if you've seen the Venn diagram. I'm sure Ed, roll your eyes at it. But for me, as a layperson, I appreciated it a good bit because, it's got the Venn diagrams of, I want stable services and I want low taxes. And, the overlap there for those is more density. And the point simply is that when you want all three circles perfectly, it literally does not exist. And so it speaks to the point of pragmatism, how to envision things, as Councilmember Gray was just speaking about. But then also regarding affordable housing, a lot of is, hey, we want this, we think it's important, but kind of over there. So, and then also the desire for open space. So I'll leave that for a second, and I just wanted to emphasize a bit of what Mayor Pro Tem Happy was talking about with the number of respondents, and greatly appreciate obviously your efforts to get 584 folks to respond and 106 folks to respond in person. But I think one of the things that is in my mind, obviously, it's going to be the people who are most passionate, or the folks who are going to be, and obviously their input is greatly valued. The question I think I will want to answer at the end of this process will be how to sell the conclusions and recommendations of this plan to the general public, when they very well may ask that same question and say, hey, I would have loved to have gotten involved, I got busy, whatever, with normal day-to-day things. And so I guess the thing that I were likely not willing to necessarily invest in, or perhaps it's a point that is duplicative in some way, but would be some sort of survey. I know there's a $10,000, maybe $15,000, some sort of statistically significant, with some sort of, ideally below 3.5% margin of error, so that we could say, hey, here is a survey that literally meets scientific rigor when it comes to reflecting what true community is.
I do want to say, we do recognize that y'all work in a multi-objective environment. When you're talking about affordability and open space and affordable housing, those trade-offs. So we understand that. We understand the challenges that come with that. And so we can help you develop an appropriate solution to find appropriate places for different.
Last thing I'll say is I found this presentation that I got a chance to look over the weekend and today really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ready? All right. Awesome.
Okay. My key point is how do we okay, how do we make our infrastructure keep up with the development and preserve the trees? No matter the affordable housing comes on changes that, and also increase commercial properties like you talked. We all need to balance this. How can we make our infrastructure keep up? Because it's so important. How can we plan better? So far, our, residents complained most is the traffic, right? Whenever we develop one community, especially affordable housing, high density community, it contributes to traffic problems. And how do we, plan better to have affordable housing community to help people, but at the meantime, we can keep our traffic flow better, not to contribute to the problem, to make it worse. Actually, I saw a video from YouTube. It's very interesting. There's in China, right? They would let rail actually goes through a building, on the top of the building. It's residential building. It's very interesting. And I was really curious, how do they, manage the noise, right? And the residents do not complain. They actually mitigate the noise to the point that residents do not complain. That's something awesome, really, right? I wish, we probably can explore some ideas or learn from, other areas, countries. They solve the problem, right? Very efficiently and make, residents happier, better. At the same time, we can have our increase commercial properties to help with tax burdens with the residents. Also have affordable housing communities to help people in need. Thank you.
Those are all really great points. I mean, I think some of the things that you all are bringing up touch on the topics of balance and also the things that let us know what areas of education are needed for as we go through this process, because helping people understand trade-offs, helping people understand how things get paid for, those kinds of things are all part of the process of people making choices, what they're willing to give up to have certain things that they deem high value. So it's not an easy situation, any community like this that's growing quickly, and it's actually a really desirable place to be. You're going to see change in the future and how you manage it, how you respond to that, and be proactive about it is what we're after with the plan. So,
and I will say, particularly to your point, Councilmember Mu, you have a unique opportunity because you're doing the comprehensive plan and a transportation plan at the same time to really try and integrate and address the concerns that you have and that you've highlighted. We hope you enjoyed sharing a little piece of whiteboard wisdom. We certainly learned a lot from you.
So we'll collect the index cards. If you wrote anything on those, we'll be happy to take those. And we just appreciate your attention and participation in this. We know you've got a long agenda, so we'll let you get back to us. The burning questions somebody would like to ask before we close. Right. Well,
Thanks so much.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
As we get started on our next item, we are happy to be back to talk with you about preparing the first community readiness plan in North Carolina using the special methodology developed by the UNC School of Government. I bring greetings from Anita Brown Graham and Michael Welker at the UNC School of Government, the NC Impact Program. And I'm also joined online, although you may not be able to see him, by David Rouse, my colleague on this work. All right, so what in God's name is a community readiness plan? Well, it's something we developed to help communities inject more of a future focus into their daily operations. And I know at times these days, I feel like the world, in some cases, it's almost changing before our very eyes. And so this is a way to help local governments get out in front of some of those changes and build their readiness and resilience to manage disruption in a rapidly changing world. The key thing we want to do with you today is find out which drivers of change from the portfolio of 16 different drivers are ones that you think the town should prioritize for inclusion in your community readiness plan. And when we visited with y'all in September for a scanning session presided over by Councilmember Gray and with other members of the council, y'all went through 16 different issues and helped us think through them. I will say too, also by way of introduction, this initiative is part of a larger program in the School of Government called Growing Practical Solutions for North Carolina. It's an effort by the school to help catalyze innovation in local government to help communities better prepare for the future. We have a wonderful chance with this project, because of the timing with the PEAK plan, to integrate this work with the PEAK plan, use it as another input into the PEAK plan process. So just know that we are coordinating closely. I'm on both teams and staying close coordination. Shannon is overseeing both for the town, is overseeing both projects, and Meg and I talk all the time about coordination. With the community readiness plan, we are really trying to do two things. We're trying to work with you to prioritize the drivers of change and find the ones that seem the most relevant to your situation here in Apex. So that's job one. Hopefully, by the end of our little session today, we'll have essentially finished that phase of the project. Then once we do that, then we'll move into developing a customized portfolio of implementation projects that y'all can pursue as a community to systematically increase your readiness and resilience to address the top drivers that you identify. We have a framework for thinking about the panoply of emerging issues that are affecting our communities. This is included in some of the background materials and in the slides you have. So I'll let you delve into that some more. There are certainly a lot of interrelationships between the 16 different issues that we feature in our analysis. We also did a special issue scan that is also background material you may have had a chance to look through. I know the folks who were involved in the scanning sessions were particularly focused on what's in here. We have a one-page write-up with whatever information we could find about each of the 16 issues and tried to find as specific information as we could pertaining to Apex. So that is a resource for you. And then we went through two kinds of public involvement. One was scanning sessions that were almost like focus groups for particular audiences. We came and visited y'all as the town council. We also did a session with a set of community stakeholders. And so we were fortunate to have the PEAK Plan Task Force. And you've got some members here sitting in the audience today. So we went through that with them. And then we also went through this with Manager Vosberg's staff team of directors and administration staff. So that is one set of input from those three scanning sessions. And then let's see, Taylor Sanchez and I staffed we've got Taylor in the back. Thank you, Taylor. Staffed a station at our public workshops at the PEAK Plan public forums. There were, as you heard, two different public forums. We had a chance to talk with the general public, and they got a chance to vote on which of the 16 issues they thought were most important for Apex to address as well. So that's a second set of input. So we compiled all that information. So we had like votes, and we turned it into, in order to normalize the data across the different sessions, we ranked from 1 to 16, which were the top issues coming out of each session. Again, we've got the scanning sessions, we've got the public forums. We weighted each of those at 50% and averaged the scores to come up with an overall scoring. I will say more details on that input and an explanation of how we've summarized it is in this little public input summary that is in your packets. So you can refer to that. There's some helpful tables in the appendices as well. If you want to see the breakout from each of the scanning sessions, what the total average was for the scanning sessions, if you want to see the same for the public forums. All right, so again, scanning sessions, public forums, averaged, so these were the top scoring issues from that format. One of the things to note, housing and climate were the top two issues, or among the top issues for each of those engagement sessions, the scanning sessions and the public forums. And then we have a assemblage of other issues on the heels of those two. So now the question is, what issues would you like to prioritize? So here's some input for you from this public engagement. Y'all have to make the final decision on which issues to prioritize. And I will say, we recommend prioritizing anywhere from 3 to 6 issues, but 3 or 4 would probably keep it more manageable. And I want to invite Shannon. Do you want to say a word about the staff has a recommendation after digesting the public input as well?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So Diane and Taylor and I have been co-working on this particular project and wanted to provide you with a staff recommendation as a starting point for your discussions about which drivers to prioritize. So you see it on the screen. Number one that we would recommend is housing. That was the number one priority across all 3 of the individual scanning sessions, as well as the overall top rank. And we heard it again throughout the peak plan public input process. We recommend climate for number 2. That was the second ranked driver for 2 of the scanning sessions. And it was also second overall when considering the public forum input as well. And then our number 3 recommendation is water. And that one stood out to us because it was number 2 out of the staff leadership group. And they really bring a lot of expertise and knowledge to what's coming in Apex that we need to be prepared for. It was actually number 1 from the public. I do think that some current events have emerged throughout this process between the scanning sessions and the public forum that kind of have made water raise up a little bit, and it was 3rd overall. While aging was number 4 overall, it's not our staff recommendation to include that as a driver of change. The data aren't really showing that an aging population is a true driver of change for Apex. So it's definitely something for us to think about, to plan for. But we feel like we can do that with the peak plan recommendations. We're looking at transportation, we're looking at growth and housing opportunities, types of housing. And it may not rise to the level of a driver of change to be considered for the readiness plan. And then that provides an opportunity to consider artificial intelligence. That was in the top 3 for 2 of the scanning sessions. Again, we're seeing that as truly an emerging issue that we're dealing with, both in terms of how we use artificial intelligence and what it means in terms of how it's provided. So those were our 4. We do know that we could have up to 6. I think to really do a good job, I'd like to stick with no more than 4, but just want to leave it at that for your discussion.
Great, thanks so
Any
much.
questions? So, the packet that you just showed to the 16 drivers and kind of the 1-pagers, it's been a minute since you've seen that. Can you remind me of what the risk is of artificial intelligence? Why do we consider that to be a driver of change? I can see that as a solution, but to look at it as a risk that we need to prepare for, I got a little trouble wrapping my head around it.
And in this effort, we're both looking at things that are risk and also things that might represent opportunities. And we know there is an upside to artificial intelligence in terms of promoting efficiency. Some folks think it's the largest productivity advancement since the advent of the internet, but it's still very much an issue that is playing out. So that's maybe some of the opportunity. We know we're experiencing more issues with data privacy. Y'all had a ransomware incident, for example. And so there are other challenges and the potential impact that it might have on certain sectors of employment. But the key thing with this issue is it is permeating almost every aspect of the economy and society. Now, of course, when we open a search engine online, it's AI enabled for enhanced search. And so it's something that has tremendous potential power. So we think we agree that we think this would be a great one to include to just fully explore and understand both the opportunities and the challenges associated. I will say one of the things you're going to find with this work compared to other processes, community processes you might have been involved in, is we are dealing with a lot of uncertainty with a lot of these issues. They are truly emerging issues coming at us from the future. In some cases, we're starting to experience them at differing degrees, but we don't always know the extent that they'll play out. And so the challenge, if we want to try and prepare, is to have to make some decisions in terms of how to prepare ourselves, even with less certainty and less information than we might usually like to have in local government. The other option is not to prepare, which doesn't seem like a great option. But I will say that uncertainty sort of necessitates probably coming back to this kind of exercise in a few years to update it with the latest information and really tracking the evolution of these different trends to see if they're playing out the way we think they might, or whether we should, make some adjustments to our priority.
Just not, maybe I'm looking at this entirely the wrong way. Like when you talk about being prepared for something, that indicates to me we're trying to address a risk, get in front of a risk. If we're looking to take advantage of something like artificial intelligence, that to me would just be direction that we give to staff. Hey, go explore opportunities that exist within, the tools that we use today, our planning software, our productivity software, whatever the case may be, to make better use of artificial intelligence to increase our effectiveness. But it's not a risk that we're averting, right? And so and again, like maybe I'm just looking at it too jaded, like from a negative point of view. I work for a bank that's how we're trained, right? Everything's a risk. So I'm just trying to understand why staff believes this is so high up, right? Because and I know there's a tremendous amount of talk about AI. I get it. I'm just not sure what we're trying to achieve in terms of preparedness. I'm just not clear.
I think honestly, in our staff discussions, it's everything that Ben described. Plus, we're thinking about the energy and support needed for the use of AI and preparing for that with other discussions.
I think, I'm trying to remember the discussion, but I think there was also potential impact to this area in particular because of our Tech Central in terms of workforce, in terms of housing, potential job replacement. I mean, there were a lot of factors. I kind of remember that being discussed as potentially having a higher impact disproportionate on this area as opposed to some other areas.
Yes, that was part of the discussion.
You don't have to provide this now, but I'm interested, what were the dates that were session 2, session 3?
They were the day after, let's see, session 2 was the night of your engagements. That was September 16th, and session 3 was the following morning, September 7th.
And then the public forums were October 22nd.
So you've got a staff recommendation. One way as you sort of think through this, are there some issues here where right away you can say, yeah, that should be on the list? And then if there's anything to talk about more, maybe that can then be a focus of your conversation here to sort of finalize the set of priorities.
To our new members, do you guys have context for what you're talking about here?
Yes.
But I'm going to defer to you folks till my inputs. I can jump in now, but I think you folks already have some laid out.
Sure, well, I was gonna say, like, to our new members, like, we already had some. And to the mayor as well, I think you were maybe absent for that session, like, I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of these, what items here you think, you know. Pull out as top priorities for your events. And I'm waiting twice, so the first session and the second session. So, I don't much to add.
So you were overweighted.
We do have a special Mahaffey factor that we.
Discount.
Called you overweight.
I like to know about the water. Is the water quality actually good in Apex? I mean, especially drinking water, because I experienced, the change, the tasting.
Sometimes there's a seasonal change as they switch to other forms of treatment. So the water issue is a pretty broad one. It includes both trying to make sure we have clean water as a resource for drinking, for serving the existing community, for growth and development. We also know the problems when water occurs in the wrong place, like in intense rainstorms and in the floodplain. So there are a range of issues with water, and we had some very thoughtful comments from Manager Vosberg's team and your staff that works on this through the Western Way Partnership, both for securing drinking water and also wastewater treatment, and trying to sort of make sure that, to your point about infrastructure is in place to continue to support the growth and development the community's been experiencing, and to make sure that that resource is used responsibly and delivered in a clean and cost-effective way. So that's an issue that has a lot of dimensions. I don't know, Manager Vosberg or others, if you want to, from the staff, if you want to say more.
I mean, I think it was broad. It was water quality, water quantity, and it was all of those together with growth, PFAS, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Important, very.
Yeah, and we did discuss during the various sessions that there's interplay between these. There were concerns related to climate that are also affecting water or housing, and so there is some overlap between it.
Thank you, got it.
Really, I just try to understand. So, public safety, I was gonna go there. I'm just trying to understand how that factors in for growing town, and was it looked at, there's perception that, we have a lower crime rate and this is the same place, but as we continue to grow, how do we sustain that?
Yeah.
And understand it's other cities and towns. Trying to figure out how to get back to the staff representation.
And the chief actually was there and talked about it too. And I think amongst staff, I don't want to say there's a sense of complacency to that, but it was like, we got that. We feel like council prioritizes that and it's there and there's already a formula and it's been funded. I don't know that the chief totally agreed with that 100%, but I think that was kind of the staff view, is that public safety was already highly prioritized. And so we didn't need to make that necessarily a priority going forward.
I do think artificial intelligence with the cameras, the chief had given us an example of a event that had occurred. And so there is that piece of it. The future may be different types of policing. It might be something to explore under that.
Yeah, but so even if we select like the top 3 and the top 4, that doesn't mean that we're gonna stop the rest of it. Right?
Exactly. Right. You've got all your existing investment that you're making. And you're absolutely right, as the town continues to grow, you're gonna have to increase the size of the police force, the size of the fire department, et cetera, to keep pace and maintain your level of service for those.
Yeah, I want to stress it. The priorities that we were identifying doesn't mean the other stuff isn't a priority.
Exactly.
It's more like we're asking staff, consultants, to go write this document, to come up with a novel plan to address these risks. And like, some of these items we know we have to do. But it's not something I want to ask you to do. We mean, things that public safety, like we know what to do, as long as to grow the town. It's not something that I think, we're looking for consultants' help on building a risk mitigation plan. So the other stuff, more novel challenges. Maybe interesting to see what we come up with.
But it wasn't simply risk mitigation as well. It was an opportunity and engagement roadmap as well. Because there were certain things like, if you look at the technology, artificial intelligence is high, but smart communities is low. But a lot of the conversations I know we had were a lot of the infrastructure of artificial intelligence would necessarily be within a smart community. So it wasn't necessarily like, these are all the problems that we're trying to figure out that we got to solve. It was more of a, all right, as we start to look at where we need to focus in terms of identifying high risk, low risk, high priority in terms of high opportunity and low opportunity. I think that's reflected within these numbers that I see here. And that's why I asked the question about how quickly did we have the same turnaround to see if there were any other factors that may have played a role in between staff and the other 3 scanning organizations before they did it. We're all operating with the same information.
Yeah. So. A clarifying question regarding whatever we end up providing in terms of recommendations. I see a list. Is that in tiered emphasis, or is it here's your 4 and they're equal emphasis in terms of depth on each one of those issues?
So the issues that you prioritize will then be the focus of our subsequent efforts to develop a set of implementation projects to help you increase your readiness and resilience to address those priority issues. So we, for the most part, won't be looking at the other issues unless, as Diane and Shannon and others have mentioned, there's like an intersection with one of those priority issues. So like the public safety dimension of artificial intelligence, for example, that would bring that issue into play. But mostly we'll be essentially developing an implementation portfolio on those top issues.
Forgive me, I should have been more clear. If we put housing as number 1 and water is number 3, is that necessarily an emphasis on housing?
No.
4 past the. Okay.
Yeah, we'll work to develop appropriate sets of implementation projects for each of those. There'll be no sort of sub prioritization within that top tier.
Yeah. Roll.
Councilmember Booth.
Are you good with the order?
Yeah. I'm good. Yeah. that's
All right,
good.
we'll take that as our marching orders, and we'll start with the second phase of the project. Thanks so much. We'll be back visiting you after working with staff and some subject matter experts. Come back, and we'll be back in the spring. We'll bring you a draft set of projects, and then we'll also prepare the actual community readiness plan. You'll have a chance to give us comment on the implementation projects, and you'll have a chance to review and adopt the final community readiness. Back to you, Shane.
I think that closes out the item.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, I should say too, yeah, the staff has put together a wonderful resource. If you want to share this with people in the community or refer to it yourself, we've now got a wonderful project website as well that serves as a resource for you. You can scan this QR code or go to that web. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good work, Rob.
Keep rolling. All right, we are now going to go into CIP overview. And I want to emphasize the overview because I mentioned only 45 minutes, right? So we know CIP is huge. I'm actually going to start and say that you might be a little overwhelmed by some of the information we're going to share today. We find ourselves in a position that we've been there in the past, but probably not to the degree that we are now. Just giving you big picture look today. The total CIP, which we tend to focus on 5 years, but the overall CIP, which goes beyond 5 years, so it includes future years, we have a request in for $645 million. When you look at the first 5 years of the CIP, which tends to be the more significant focus, we're at $367 million. Sounds okay, maybe, until I give you some additional context on what the revenue side and funding side of that looks like. And obviously Jessica is going to go into more detail on that, so I'll hit the highlights. Getting down to it, we have around 242 million of that is not funded. So again, 367 million in a 5 year, and 242 of that will be unfunded based on our current paradigm, which Jessica will share some information. So then you might ask, well, what would it take to fully fund all of those requests in the 5 year plan? And it looks like anywhere from 7 to 11 cents. It would vary, but in the beginning part, it would be somewhere closer to 10 and 11 cents and coming down to 7. That would be over a 20-year period that you would need to increase that in our tax rate to fund our 5 year stay. So we say all of that to let you know that we have some significant decisions to make over the coming months. This is a journey on our CIP. We've been working on it as staff for many months. We kicked off a lot of it. October was when staff turned in their requests. There was some work done in November within the portfolios management team. Then December 5th, or actually last week, the three of us sat down and kind of talked through the CIP. We've got the meeting today. And in January sometime, there will be, based on some input that we get today and future input, we'll put something out for ranking. And then the goal would be in February in our retreat, which is around scheduled for mid-February, that we would start to put some prioritization with the CIP so that then we can prepare our budget that the town manager's budget in April. So from now until that budget comes out in April, we're really looking for you to have some influence on that CIP. This is your opportunity to guide that. You'll have opportunities after we release the budget, but we'd like to really put forward a product that most represents your wishes. So knowing that big picture, we're going to go through data, and I'll turn it over now to Jessica.
So I'm just going to dive right in. Today, I'm going to give a quick overview of just in general what the CIP is, what our capital improvement plan is, and what that process looks like. Then we're going to dive into our budget priorities resident survey results, as well as the results from the staff scoring that is done for all the projects. And then we're going to do quick project overviews. The purpose of this presentation is really to create a toolkit for you all as you do your prioritization exercise in January. So there'll be a lot of information on the projects on the slides. I'm not going to read every single thing off the slide. I'm just going to emphasize the descriptions and some standout information, maybe grant funding. And we also have project managers here tonight if you have any specific questions about projects. So what is a capital improvement plan? It is a planning mechanism by which town council allocates limited financial resources to implement long-term goals. We utilize adopted plans such as the downtown master plan or game plan Apex, as well as factors such as development reports and debt capacity to shape projects and needs. Our capital improvement plan is just a plan. The first year of the CIP is adopted with funding at the start of each fiscal year, and then all future years are subject to change based on future priorities and financial constraints. So why do we do this? We forecast and match projected revenues and major capital needs over a 5-year period, aiming to capture all of our capital expenses with an asset value over $100,000 and a useful life greater than 3 years. The projects that are eligible for this include acquisition of land, construction or significant renovation of public facilities, construction of new transportation infrastructure, expansion or significant renovation of our utility infrastructure, and as well as capital equipment that supports operations. So Randy actually just went over this whole chart. So this is just to show that our CIP is an annual cycle. We start this at the beginning of the fiscal year, starting to collect and plan for our next fiscal year. And it goes all the way through May when we're doing our public hearing here from the public. So now I'm going to turn it over to our graduate intern and UNC MPA candidate, Rachel Wooster. She took on our budget priorities survey this year. So I'm going to have her come on up and present the results.
So as Jessica said, I'm Rachel and I'll be presenting the results from the budget priority survey this year. I wanted to start off by giving a huge shout out to the communications department and all of their hard work with the public engagement side of things. You may have seen sidewalk stickers around town locations along with greenways, the social media campaigns and e-newsletter. And in total, we had 459 survey respondents this year. So looking at an overview of the survey, when respondents first clicked the link, they would see this page, which is the purpose of the survey, the timeline, contact information. And then in addition, there were 2 required questions, which asked if respondents lived in Apex, worked in Apex, both or neither, along with selecting the area of Apex they live in based on a survey geographies map provided by the planning department. So similar to last year, there was a strategic goal rank question asking respondents to rank their strategic goals. They were given these 5 strategic goals I'm sure you're familiar with, along with a brief description of each of them. Looking at the results, this chart shows the percent of respondents that ranked each of these strategic goals as their top goal, dark green being this year and light green being last year. There weren't a lot of major changes. Responsible development continues to be a top priority for respondents. And then there's a narrowing of the gap between welcoming community and high-performing government. And more people this year ranked economic vitality as their top strategic goal over environmental leadership compared to last year. What was really exciting about those surveys that we were actually able to update the focus area questions, moving from rank to actually a dollar allocation tool. So here is an example from the survey with high-performing government, where they were given a $1 million budget to then allocate across the focus areas, including one of them being none of these are important to me. And what's really exciting about this update is that it's able to reflect the real world budget trade-offs that are happening, while also letting respondents dedicate dollars to what they really care about. And in the budgeting world, with a finite amount of money, respondents could decide if they wanted to allocate money to just one focus area or spread it across multiple, meaning that we get insights into how respondents want to see their tax dollars spent. Now, with this changing from rank to dollar allocation, it does mean that we're not able to compare focus area responses to the previous year. And it also was optional, meaning that when we take all of the dollars allocated to these focus areas under the strategic goal, those total amounts can vary because people could skip them. Within the presentation, the total amount at the top that I'll show you in a second include any dollars dedicated to none of these are important to me. But when I show you the dashboard, those dollars are removed if they had dedicated it to none of these are important to me. So we have a more clear and accurate picture of those spending choices. I wanted to start off with the results of the focus area for high performing government because it actually received the most dollars allocated to it, even though there's a relatively high percent dedicated to none of these are important to me. That being said, the most dollar allocation went to competitive employee pay and benefits, which indicates a desire for a well-supported workforce that continues to provide those high-quality services Apex is known for. Moving to welcoming community, which had the second highest dollar amount allocation, improving existing parks and greenways received the most dollars allocated to it across the different focus areas, but there is less of a gap in spread across those focus area spending. Third, was responsible development. Even though this was third with the total most allocated, it did have the least dedicated to none of these are important to me, meaning that respondents made a decision when they had that $1 million to spread it across these focus areas instead of deciding to allocate it and remove it into none of these are important. Similar to that idea in welcoming community of maintaining and improving existing infrastructure, that comes up here again with welcoming community. It was maintaining and improving existing parks and greenways, and here it's maintaining and improving existing roadways. Environmental leadership had the fourth highest dollar amount allocation in total, with thinking back again with welcoming community and this idea of green space coming out. With welcoming community, it was parks and greenways, and here respondents wanted to see their tax dollars allocated and spent on community forestry. Finally, with economic vitality, this had the least dollars allocated to it, and it had the most percentage-wise dedicated to none of these are important to me. That being said, those who did decide to allocate those dollars to the focus areas, there's a clear winner, and also an exception to what I said about maintaining and improving existing infrastructure, with here having the most dollars allocated to expanding infrastructure when it's supporting new and growing businesses. I also wanted to know, thinking back to that top strategic goal rank question, more respondents had put economic vitality as their top goal over environmental leadership. But then when we gave them the focus areas to dedicate those dollars to, environmental leadership actually received more money on total amount compared to economic vitality.
On that same note, like, I noticed too that high performing government got the most dollars, but number 3 in terms of ranking. Do we know how to explain that?
I think a lot of times, I think it has to do with the focus area questions when we're given a broad category of a strategic goal. That broad category, you're not quite sure what fits under it, but then when they're given those focus areas and the categories within it, then like, for example, here they're given the actually what falls under economic vitality. And I think that might change.
Thank you.
Yeah, so then there was 2 open-ended questions asking what the town does best and what they can improve upon. And we took the themes discussed in those open-ended questions and pulled out the large topics within it and put it in a word cloud, with the larger the word being they were used more frequently. Here, you can see the strategic goal of welcoming community coming through with community, parks, recreation, greenways, and downtown. And a lot of these do align with that focus area dollar allocation. With what the town can do to improve the community, it's important to note with the responses for this question that those responses are not inherently negative or positive. For example, Greenway showed up on what the town does best, and then also what they can improve upon. So it's not don't do more or don't do this, it's actually more of this. But here you can see a lot of themes emerging with the responsible development strategic goal, like traffic, roads, infrastructure, sidewalks, which also matches that focus area dollars. We added in a survey satisfaction question this year. So, and this shows us that the respondents were overwhelmingly very satisfied or satisfied with the survey. And as always, there's the optional demographics portion. With the optional demographics portion, it is optional, so respondents could decide to answer all the questions, some of them, or none of them. So the response rate is going to vary in comparison to the survey responses as well. Finally, we took all of that survey data and we put it in a dashboard, so it allows you to take a deeper dive into the survey responses for yourself, which we will show you. Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna stand in the corner over here. So these buttons allow you to navigate to the different pages, or you can use the arrow at the bottom. Starting with the strategic goals question, this is the graph that you saw in the presentation showing the top strategic goal chosen by residents. In addition, $1.74 billion total was allocated to focus areas, excluding none of these are important to me. And we took that spending pattern as a percent of the each of the focus areas within the strategic goal. And then here is the survey satisfaction question you saw before and the 2-word question for the open-ended question. On this dashboard, the charts are filterable. So for example, you can click on one of them and the numbers will slightly change. And then here it's highlighted. So this is showing the responses based on those who put responsible development as a top goal. You can click to unselect or hit the clear filters button. Next, moving to the focus areas. Speaking about the areas of Apex I had talked about before and the survey geographies map. This shows the number of respondents who live in these areas of Apex. And then similarly here in the graph, we can see that these are the focus area spending trends within each of the strategic goals, with the boxes in the right-hand corner being that total amount of the focus areas, excluding none of these are important to me, any dollars dedicated to that. The charts are color coded so you can easily navigate along the page, and the map is filterable. So for example, if I select 9, you're seeing responses and dollar allocations based on those who live in area 9. Finally, there's the demographics portion. Again, because it was optional, respondents could skip all of them, just answer some of them, or answer all the questions. And so that means that the response rates within the questions themselves can vary as well. But 279 people did respond to at least one of those demographics questions. These charts show things like age, household income, gender, which give a snapshot into some of the resident or the respondents' demographics. These charts are filterable. So for example, if I select this one, all of the charts highlight and change. So you're seeing the demographics of those 36 to 45. And the map is filterable like I showed before as well. That's all. Thank you so much for letting me present, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Questions? Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
I'm going to dive into our staff scoring results and capital project overviews. So here is a summary of our general fund CIP by element. As we mentioned earlier, our total CIP for all of the elements is about just under 645 million. And I'll draw your attention to this handout and just kind of walk through in greater detail what that is showing. So this further zooms into the immediate 5 years of the CIP. And we have some identified funding sources already, such as remaining bond funding from the 2021 transportation bond. We have identified grant funding, such as transit grants and Powellville funding. And then we typically, as part of our jet model, include rolling stock loans for equipment. Then when we look at our capital investment fund debt funding, as well as our average fund transfers from the general fund to fund capital, we have 24 million every 2 years available in our CIF, and we do approximately 7 million per year in transfers. So that would give us about 95 million over 5 years. But we also have projects that we're contractually obligated to, or is part of mandatory maintenance, such as roof repair. And so that's about 21 million that is taking some of that funding, which means that the total remaining available for funding projects is about 73.5 million. So that gets us to that number that was highlighted earlier, where 242 million would be unfunded in the current CIP. So our CIP is categorized into elements, which really just aligns with the capital funds that we have set up. So we also have it broken down by our functions across the town to emphasize the spread of departments involved in our capital projects, as well as the cost distribution. We have a lot of departments involved, and some areas do require a heavier cost allocation. We also have our utility fund CIP. We have 55 total projects across the 3 utilities, totaling just under 297 million. So moving into project ranking by staff and by you all. So each year we reprioritize the CIP based on new initiatives, financial conditions. So it's possible that projects are ranked various years. We do exclude projects that are ongoing, that fall outside of that immediate 5-year purview or are required for operations such as facility maintenance or equipment replacement. Anything outside of those above categories are selected for ranking. So our staff scored each project against each 8 categories, including public health and public safety, deferred maintenance or existing infrastructure, legal mandates, business plans or existing projects, funding and budget impact, the extent of the service area, economic development, and governmental services. So you will see that out of all these questions, some are select one and others are select all that apply because they may apply to more than one. So on our project slides, you will see the score that each project received. And it ranges from 58 was our annual pavement management program. That was our top scored project, all the way down to 23.5, which was Tingen Road pedestrian bridge. So even though you can achieve a score of 118, you would have to hit a lot of those, all of these categories apply, and that's just typically not the case. So our average project score this year was 30.82, and it ranged from 23 to 58. So zooming in on top 5 ranked projects and bottom 5 ranked projects, you'll notice in our top 5, they qualify in areas that have scoring such as grant funding for annual pavement management. That's a budget, positive budget impact as opposed to adding costs or operating, as well as items that have to do with public health or safety. And then our bottom 5 projects, they don't hit a lot of the categories very specifically. It might be a smaller project that's not identified in a plan, or it may not be a mandate, but this is something we're here in our community. So it's just those projects just aren't quite hitting those 8 specific categories. So now we're going to dive into project overviews. I'm just going to give a lay of what all of the information is on the slide, because I won't read every project. So we have the project and the total project through the entire CIP, the description, and then the current project status, which contains where it's at currently, or if it's not started, and if there's any identified funding sources. We included the future operating impact, and then we gave the specifics of the staff scoring, as well as the agreement of scores. So what the agreement is did everybody say that the annual pavement management was a score of 59? That would be a above average agreement if everyone had a similar score. If it's below average, that means there could have been a range. Someone might have scored it 80 and another person 40, and it gets to that average closer to 60. And then we also highlighted what focus area of the budget priorities survey that this project would align with.
Yeah, sorry. Do you want me to interrupt you, or you want me? Okay. Just on the staff score, right? Just want to know about the presentation, public input. It's very difficult with staff scoring, right? Like what the public clearly identifies is infrastructure projects. If I look at the staff scoring, my first infrastructure project is number 13. Okay, so in our rating criteria, our scoring criteria, are we sensitive to the input that we're receiving from the public? Because the first couple in staff priority are very self-serving, right? They're all stuff for us as a town, right? Whereas, ultimately we're to serve the public, right? And so there seems to be a disconnect between what we just learn from our public inputs versus how we ask staff to learn these projects. And so, that being said, I'm not sure what really the validity is the staff ranking, right, if we have not considered public input.
That's a great point. It doesn't cover the criteria of community input. These are running simultaneously, so the staff doesn't have that information at the time. But the categories are more based on, is the project meeting certain criteria? Is it having a positive budget impact or negative? Is it addressing public safety concerns, or is it not? Are we pushing forward an established plan, or are we not? Is this a legal mandate? So they're looking more at these specific criteria to.
And I get it, right, but I hope you see the disconnect that I'm seeing. Right?
I think it's a built-in disconnect. I mean, it's two data points for you to have. You have the staff opinion, which is informed through legal requirements, and you have the public points that aren't necessarily informed by legal requirements or, I mean, it's two different backgrounds that you're drawing from. And I think that the true blend is a balance of it, in my opinion. Because if you look at, I'm trying to think of an example, and maybe something that is legally mandated that the public has no desire for us to do. But
And I'm not saying that these criteria are necessarily ordinarily wrong, right? But it seems like we're missing the public desire, right? So if it's a must do, it's a must, right? Like, no escaping, right? It goes right to the top. But then the stuff that is quote unquote discretionary, or the dollars that are discretionary, right? I think that public input should be weighed in the decision-making process, including the decision-making process from staff.
I think what Randy's clearly saying is that's your job.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, we're supposed to decide, like, is staff input, and then, or like, they want to say, staff, I'm sorry, you're wrong, or
Yeah.
that's something you do.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this as being discordant in the sense of.
Well, so here's my problem with that, right? So let's assume just for argument's sake, that one of these things is absolutely legally required, and therefore staff ranks it high. We do not have that influence, right? So we might say, staff, you're wrong, this goes in the bottom, right? And now we have made a decision that puts whatever, legal requirement was for change, right? So I think there needs to be a balance that includes these scoring criteria, which we do not have visibility, right? All we see is the ultimate ranking, right? We don't know why this is ranked fifth.
That's a good question. You could ask Alice, right? Like, if you want to list projects, which, because if you look at the scoring criteria by staff, that's a subset of what they did, but I mean, we could ask to give us a list of, okay, what are the projects that are legally mandated? And if they have what's the staff, check that one box.
And if you look at,
like, okay, what's must do, right? And then where's my discretionary, or how much of that is out of the fifth of being consuming, and what is left for discretionary stuff? Because it narrows our budget because we're looking at 73 million right now. It might not be 73 million, it might only be 50 million by the time we're done with all the must do.
I mean, the number one from staff scoring was annual payment management, which I would definitely say infrastructure, which topped as probably, I mean, if you go back to this one, the infrastructure.
Yeah, but that's not deep in the road. But the biggest part for it is like we need more roads, bigger roads, better roads, more roundabout, especially more roundabout.
Maybe, that's your definition.
Yeah, hey, someone who's driving on a really bumpy road, probably gonna say, all right.
I mean, they want to get from A to D, right? They don't want to go from A to B like super smooth. So.
I don't see this.
There's an observation.
I don't see this as discord. I think this is two different viewpoints that we gotta be able to take into account. And I mean, I tend to think that, if you went to the average resident and said, hey, do you think that paving roads is important? They're going to say yes. And if you say, hey, do you think you want more parks? They're going to say yes. I mean, I don't, I think that's why that's why I want staff to basically give me, okay, give me an idea what your priority list is. Their priority list may not be my priority list. Your priority list may not be my priority list. I think that to me is the reason why we're getting different people.
I think also what makes it complicated is a lot of these items are tied to funding.
Yeah.
Or self-funding, and it's not like we need to remove all the pavement work that we do, and say, okay, we can use that money. This can't. A lot of pavement money is all bill, and that has to be use that road. And likewise, a lot of the greenways and stuff, we try to grant the shot. We don't use greenways to build a building.
But again, hence my comment that 73 million of planning funding might not be 73 million just by the time we're done. Meaning is that, like, unless they're in the, contractual obligation line already, right? And then it's already factored in. So anyway, let's move on.
So for presenting, this is more so a toolkit while you guys prioritize. So it has all the information on one slide. You'll still get the booklet of all project descriptions to use as you fill out your survey. But for today, I'm just really going to focus on the project cost description and the statuses. And if you have any questions as we go throughout, you can stop us. So we're starting with annual pavement management. This project totals 44.375 million over the CIP, and it is maintaining and resurfacing our town streets with preservation treatments and curb ramp upgrades. So this one is an ongoing annual project, and we usually exclude those. This has 2.4 million in Powell bill funding, but the town still funds over that amount, which is why we still had it on the list. Currently for next year, for example, it's an additional 1.2 million over what we do receive for Powell bill funding. So it still has an effect on that overall.
And the 24 million is total backlog?
No, that is the total over the next 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, the backlog has been fully funded by the 10 million from the bonds that has funds been received.
I'll just reiterate that.
The Apex Peakway at Tingen Road intersection improvements is $1.5 million. This adds left turn lanes and traffic signals with signalized crosswalks at Apex Peakway and Tingen Road. This project is not yet started, and it also has some future operating impacts of maintenance of about $2,400 per year. Our Apex Peakway North widening project is $13.1 million, and it widens Apex Peakway from Center Street to Old Raleigh Road to 4 lanes. Design is currently underway. The feasibility study has been completed, and we have applied for federal funds as well. We do have 9 million in transportation bond funding to cover this. So there's a smaller gap on this project than the full 13 million. Our Apex Peakway Southwest widening is 4.38 million, and it widens Apex Peakway from Cadstone Drive to James Street to a 4-lane road. This project is not started and also has some maintenance increasing operating costs in the future. Center Street Railroad crossing improvements is 1.35 million. This expands the crossing service and upgrades railroad gates to complete south side sidewalk connection from the depot to Elm Street. This project design is currently underway, and we have 850,000 in the transportation bond funding for this project. And similar to Center Street, Chatham Street Railroad is a similar project, but it's connecting Chatham Street to Elm Street on the north side. And this is also under design and similarly has 850,000 in dedicated bond funding.
These, another sort of quiet zone remark here, like, will that result in a quiet zone, or are these improvements just making us more capable of establishing a quiet zone?
Yeah, there's a separate process, but those would sort of run parallel with the way that railroads run to me. So we would have an agreement for sidewalk projects, what's required for those, there'd be a separate agreement that would bring in Federal Rail Administration to make sure it's getting the process to apply to them. So upgrading the part here includes upgrading gates, which require
So this, I guess my question is, does this get us ready for the next application? And that's ready?
Yes.
Okay.
And then along with those two projects, phase 2 of that completes the opposite side sidewalk at each of those locations. This is not started because phase 1 needs to be completed. We have Davis Drive at Salem Street, Salem Church Road realignment that is $7.3 million. This realigns and widens Davis Drive and Salem Church Road, adding traffic signals and upgraded railroad gates. It also shifts the intersection west to improve safety. This project is not started. The downtown projects, this is no longer the Main Street sweep. This is Commerce Street and Seaboard Street improvement. This totals $4.3 million, and it is funding the right-of-way and construction for both of those street improvements. Currently, we are underway with acquisition. Go Apex new bus stop installations. This totals $700,000 and involves designing and acquiring right-of-way for and constructing around 30 new bus stops to support updated Go Apex routing, as well as new local routes. This project is not yet started, but we do anticipate 65% in grant funding. GPS emergency vehicle preemption is $700,000, and it involves installs GPS preemption at 10 traffic signals per year along major corridors to improve travel times and coordination. This project is not started, and it's pending NCDOT signal plan and controller upgrades. Jesse Drive Phase 2 is $60 million. This completes the 4-lane divided gap on Jesse Drive to create a continuous route between 1010 and NC 55. This project has not been started. Phase 1 is receiving has bond funding associated. Olive Chapel Road, Apex Barbecue Road improvements is $600,000, and it is going to improve the Olive Chapel Road and Apex Barbecue Road intersection with added turn lanes, wider shoulders, rumble strips. This is currently, lab funding has been approved for design and right-of-way phases that we've already funded, so this is the remainder of that project. Richardson Road at Corbanks Street traffic signal is $650,000, and it adds a town-maintained traffic signal with signalized crosswalks at Richardson Road and Corbanks Street to manage the growing traffic and improve pedestrian safety. This project is currently pending a warrant study in 2026. The S-Line Mobility Hub is $2.3 million, and it develops a mobility hub at the Eastmore Parking Street area to support future bus and potential rail service, as well as aligning with upcoming transit routes and providing central downtown connection. The feasibility study for this is complete, and it is anticipated to receive 65% in grant funding. South Salem Street Bicycle Connection is $2.12 million. It adds pavement markings that indicate shared bicycle and vehicle space along Salem Street and adds bike lanes across South Salem Street to implement a top bike apex priority and improve bicycle facilities. The design contract scoping is currently underway, and we do have federal funds awarded for part of it. Tingen Road pedestrian bridge / tunnel is just over $10 million, which builds a bike ped tunnel under Tingen Road railroad crossing, realigns Tingen Road, and adds a greenway link. The feasibility study is underway, and final design phase will be coming to council in February. Our traffic signal system is $3.53 million, and it is establishing an annual regional traffic signal operation and maintenance agreement with Holly Springs and Fuquay Marina to support growing town signal responsibilities and enhancing system safety and performance. This project is not yet started. Wayfinding signage fabrication and installation is $1.6 million, which fabricates and installs townwide wayfinding signs to support the downtown plan, enhance branding, and improve navigation for residents and visitors. It's currently in design and permitting phase. We have Wimberley Road sidewalk, which is $350,000, and that adds sidewalks on both sides of Wimberley Road to close gaps in the pedestrian network near Lake Castleberry. This also utilizes developers' fee and contribution, and this one is not started. We're gonna dive into Parks and Rec. The Beaver Creek Greenway extension is a $17.7 million project, and it extends Beaver Creek Greenway in 3 different segments. It connects JC Park to NC 55, Nature Park to Richardson Road, and Richardson Road to the American Tobacco Trail. The scope has been created for this project and design contract is anticipated in early 2026. Our future operating includes adding not only maintenance, but also operations personnel. The Beaver Creek Greenway renovation is a $6 million project, which would evaluate and address the frequent flooding along Beaver Creek Greenway, which would study realignment options, relocate damaged infrastructure, and coordinate with federal agencies on feasible floodplain repairs. This project is not yet started, and based on maintenance we do currently, this would have a future savings. The Big Branch Greenway is a $5.4 million project, and it completes Big Branch Greenway from Apex Peakway to US 1. This project has not yet started and also involves adding operations personnel. The Community Park Trail widening is a $5.675 million project, and it widens Community Park Trail to improve the accessibility, add channels that manage stormwater and reduce erosion, address curbs and slopes, and preserves our trees, rebuilding shoulders, and reinstall memorial benches, as well as upgrading amenities to our current town standards. The scope for this project is currently in progress. The Environmental Education Center is an $8.3 million project. It builds a facility at Apex Nature Park with educational, office, meeting, and exhibit spaces, plus upgrades the shelter and restroom. The design contract is currently pending for this project and would have future operating impacts for staffing, building maintenance, as well as programming. The Hunter Street Park renovation is $1.875 million, and it replaces the 2016 turf field. It adds paved areas and a retaining wall, and involves slope stabilization to reduce erosion, manage stormwater, and improve accessibility. This project is not yet started. GC Park expansion is $5.7 million, and it develops the west side of the park with an open playfield, shelter with restrooms, playground, adaptive court spaces, and additional parking. This project is not yet started and also has future operating impacts with maintenance and operations. Our Kids Town playground renovation is $3.2 million. It replaces the existing playground equipment, improves surfacing, and renovates the existing shelter and restrooms. It also adds an additional rental shelter. The design phase for this project is currently in progress, and its estimated completion date is May of 2027. Middle Creek Greenway is $4.6 million, and it extends bike and pedestrian facilities north of Jesse Drive to 1010 Road. And this scope for this project is created, and we are anticipating design contract in early 2026. Nature Park Operations and Maintenance Building is a $16.9 million project, and it replaces the current operations and maintenance building with a 2-story office, warehouse, and sign shop. It also adds staff parking. This project is not currently started. The Reedy Branch Greenway is a $7 million project that extends Reedy Branch Greenway from Goliath Lane to Kelly Road to close the gap to the American Tobacco Trail. The scope for this project is has been created, and we're anticipating design in early 2026. Seymour Athletic Fields and Nature Park parking lot expansion and turf renovation is a $3.8 million project, and it adds 50 new parking spaces at Seymour Athletic Fields area after removing the existing maintenance and operations building and yard. So this project is dependent on the operations building project moving forward. The Street Hockey and Inclusive Playground is a $3.1 million project, and it replaces the existing playground. It adds a roof and lighting, as well as IT upgrades to support our street hockey programming. The scope and fees proposal is currently in process for this project. Town campus stage is $696,700. This designs and builds a permanent stage in a grassy area of the art lot on town campus. This is currently in initial design and estimates. that have been completed, and we're under consideration for 50% grant match with the Wake County Hospitality Fund. Wimberley Road Park is a $98 million project. This designs and develops a nearly 50-acre site with recreation center, maintenance facility and yard, and park amenities. The scope is complete on this project, and it has a large operating impact for personnel, park maintenance, park operations, as well as programming. Moving into facilities, the depot parking lot repurposing is a $2.3 million project, which would convert the depot parking lot into a curbless downtown gathering space with flexible shaded sunny areas, lighting, and furnishings for markets and community events. This project is not started. We have our electric vehicle supply equipment infrastructure development, which is a total of $348,000. This installs infrastructure to support new EV chargers so the town can work towards electrifying its fleet. This is guided by our EV suitability assessment, and we focus on the departments with the highest potential for EV adoption. And we've currently completed phase 1 of the fire department administration building is a $14.5 million project that builds a new facility for fire department administration as well as other staff. This replaces the building off on C-55 that will eventually be demolished for construction. Its current status is under advanced planning. The design is scheduled for May of 2026, with the construction bid being prepared by July 2027. Fire Station 3 renovation and addition is an $8.1 million project that renovates Station 3 to provide the living spaces adequate to relocate Fire Station 1 to Fire Station 3. This is currently in the design phase and is ready to bid for construction in October of 2026. Hughes Street Mixed Use Development is a $10.6 million project which designs and builds street, water, and sewer infrastructure for the town-owned site by widening Perry Road and South Hughes Street, and provides new pedestrian facilities and adding new on-site residential street with sidewalks. So current status is that we're underway with site planning and design. And I will also mention that for resident survey alignment, this also aligns with adding additional affordable housing units, since that is what the site is identifying. Public Safety Station 7 is an $18 million project that constructs Public Safety Station 7 to improve response times in the growing Olive Chapel area. This project is not yet started and comes with a $1.2 million operating impact to add a full fire crew. Townwide Solar Initiative designs and constructs solar panels on 12 town facilities to support our environmental leadership goals. We are currently in phase 1 of 3. So the remaining costs are just those final 2 phases. Any questions about projects while we have everyone here?
Just a few broad bits.
So we had talked about speculated about people parking. Cover some of the projects and New Wimberley Road, RWA. Is it true that that's not reflected in this thing?
It is not.
Okay. In terms of general debt capacity, I saw like the SIP debt funding line has 12 million per year. So it looks like some debt funding is scheduled here, but not the 100 million or so we had estimated for the Parks bond. Is there anything else that's either like, or do those things combine?
So there's 2 options with the park bond that we talked about at the debt workshop. One is that you cannot use the SIF funding for a few years to bank it until you get to that 100 million and use it for the park. And then you wouldn't have to do any kind of tax rate increase to offset the bond. Or you can do it completely separately, where we have our SIF fund and we're funding projects every couple of years. And we also do a bond, which would come with a tax rate increase to support funding that debt payments.
Okay, so this isn't no debt increase. Or I
Yes.
know,
This is steady state, so our capital investment fund, as we're funding it in this moment, and our general fund transfers as we are in this moment. So when you add a parks fund to that, that covers that project, or if you decide to increase, change the capital fund increasing or funding, that would also change.
So our current steady state is only $12 million a year.
Finance, and that's financing, so keep in mind, it's not 12 million projects, that's taking that money and financing it over 20 years, so that's your debt service payment, which is gonna be 24, it's gonna be roughly a penny on a tax rate.
And our fund transfer is only 7 million. I thought we had set up to be, I forget the number, 6.5 cents or something. It was closer to 10 or whatever.
So no, so fund transfer, go.
So fund transfers are just projects that we include in the budget, whether they come from, that's just general fund money. That's on top of the SIF. So the SIF is actually the penny allocation that you're talking about, which we did 7 cents, which is transferred to the debt fund for funding the SIF. But on top of that, we also fund projects through just regular general fund money as well.
So for some of these projects where we have grants or other contributions, is the cost that's reflected here the net expense to the town, or is it the total cost?
That is the total cost of the project.
Can we get a view for these projects then, that is basically what is the town's expense,
Yeah.
right? Because I look at, for example, the $24 million for pavement management, but half of that or more is paid by, with the power bill, then, obviously our cost is much lower than that.
We can include that in the full packet that you guys get for the prioritization exercise.
a quick question. Thanks for the presentation. For these projects, like, given, sure, I know we're looking at like estimates of pay, what is the process?
Yeah, so every year, staff has to resubmit every single project. So we ask for them to get, but maybe we just finished a building and they'll update the cost per square foot for that estimated building, based on our most recent projects. So every single year, the projects are reviewed, to get us to the most up-to-date costs that we can be. But we also run into things where, we even have our designs and those estimates don't come in where bids are at. So, we do review these annually.
But the estimate, that's a good point. The estimates are in, say, $26.
Correct.
Even if it is scheduled for 31.
We do apply escalators to the future years. So we have those added each year. So projects in the future have a certain percentage. Yeah, yeah.
For the, this CIP plan is for 5 years, right?
Yes.
Correct me if, I'm wrong. From the presentation, I remember that with this 5-year CIP plan, we need tax increase 7 cents to 11 cents, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
If you fully fund
Fully
it
funded,
as it
yes,
is
I
today,
remember, yes,
that's correct.
yes. But we don't have to fully fund every
No.
kind of, yeah.
No, and that's where the prioritization comes into play. What we're trying to show is that there's that option, or would we go to you for prioritization to make those guide that future?
Thank you.
Because as you're considering what it would be a tax increase for the capital, you also then have the operational side. So we bring a new park online, you've now got to staff that park. So you got to think about doubling or
It's
whatever.
more complicated, yeah, than just numbers.
Any other questions?
More to come, let that marinate. Work through it. And I did want to mention this real quick, back to the point where it's not kind of throwing it out to you guys and you're just part of our role as administration, bring you a budget as well. The more input we get, we will take all the factors. Take the public factor, we'll take the staff factor, we'll take your input, and we'll try to put forward a financially feasible plan. But of course, your opinion will give you at least a good foundation to consider.
Great. We're done. Almost done.
We have one item left. Keep rolling?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Are you okay?
I'm too.
Chris has to get some out too. All right. Ready, we've got our last item. Thank you for allowing us to add this to the agenda. We have been trying to work through this. We've got a bid award that's pending. Chris is going to present on it. It was supposed to be on the last regular council agenda. But we still wanted to work on negotiations and work through some details. I'll turn it over to Chris to share some of the hard work that his team has been putting.
Yeah, so of course, you know, this item is many years, kind of culmination of planning work and engineering work that started back in 2019. Had a lot of departments that have worked on this. Me and Adam are presenting today, but just want to reflect that this is the, I guess, the second phase of 4 projects. First project being the one that Saunders Lot that was just successfully completed. Again, want to thank so many departments like Joanna from Economic Development, Stacy, Communications, Planning, Electric, IT, Public Works, Water Resources. There's so many people that work on it behind the scenes at different levels, but a great project that added 200 spots to downtown. So that project was actually lower in priority than the Salem Streetscape project, but being that this project is going to take away some spots, we wanted to add spots in advance of that project. So Salem Streetscape is the #1 priority out of the downtown plan from 2019, basically to provide more pedestrian-friendly, wide sidewalks, outside dining, gathering spaces, street trees, and amenities. So I'm going to turn it over here to Adam, but basically we got some good news. We got some bad news. We got 2 bids. They were higher than what we expected. I will say that is not what we would like, but it is sometimes what we deal with, especially on these types of unique projects that are urban streetscape. They require a lot more risk, a lot more challenges than suburban style projects. So we have talked a lot with the contractor. Adam's been doing a great job. But we'll go through all that, and hopefully if everything moves forward next year at this time, we'll be wrapping up this project and be moving on to the next phase, which will be the Commerce Street app. Turn it over to Adam.
So Chris went over the background. We've got some of the renderings of the pressure on what we're looking to achieve downtown. And so we advertised the project in October. We attempted to open bids November 5th. Formal bid requirement, 3 bids minimum. We only had 1 in hand. So we had to re-advertise. Second bid opening the 19th. We had 2. So we were allowed to open. Key element is time. So we're looking at the downtown businesses. This is going to be big impact, but the target all along has been, let's get this thing kicked off as soon as possible, beginning of the calendar year, outside of holiday season, and ideally finish before the next holiday season. So we have 270 days in the contract. So sticker shot, engineer's estimate, 2.5 million. We got 2 bids, 4.3, 4.8. I will say, I spoke after the fact, had another bidder, was very close, said he was hovering around 4. So, you know, maybe would have been 10% less than the low bid we got. But in the end, it was the risk element he was not comfortable with. So I wouldn't want you to look at this. I'm not looking at this as, oh, the town is getting ripped off. I think the estimate failed to capture the nature, the particulars of this project. The specialty items, I think a lot of the prices, they were using, you know, bid averages. There's almost nothing in this project that I would call average. These are specialty items. And more importantly, the risk. I don't think the risk was captured. They're going to have to maintain access to all these businesses throughout. So there's lots of liability involved. So we did go through with the engineer and the low bidder, kind of the items that really jumped out compared to the estimate. The big ones, light poles and fixtures. There's a lot going into that, not just what you're seeing above ground. Not everything in the project is broken out, accounted for, specified with an individual line item.
So the contractor has to work out, well, where am I gonna put that? And there's a lot in that item beyond just the above ground element. So we did talk at length with the engineer, with the contractor, looking for solutions. Anything we could put together to save the town money. But at the end of the day, there's really nothing we can present to the town that we were happy with, that the contractor could live with. You know, some of the issues, if we were to have maybe Public Works do the string lighting, or maybe we break out the poles and fixtures, we bid those separately. But then we're coordinating with the contractor, it's their project, they're responsible for it, and they weren't comfortable with that. And at the end of the day, all the items we looked at, could the town have saved? Potentially, but there's no guarantee. And then there's risk shifting from the contractor to the town with anything we decide to try to handle separately. So we're asking for consideration, two options. We award this slow bid and we add 10% contingency for the budget, or we reject. If we reject, we can look at re-advertising, possibly with a modified or reduced scope. But understand, if we do that, we are seriously jeopardizing our ability to deliver this project and possibly finish before next holiday season.
Which leaves an alternative in that option than delaying it a full season.
But if we delay the full season, we're looking at an increase in cost.
Yeah.
So we could be right.
That's the thing. We re-advertise it, whether we change the scope or not. It's not gonna get cheaper. And there's no guarantee, these two bidders we got, there's no guarantee they come back. We weren't guaranteed one of them was gonna return to the second opening. So lots of risk. We got two solid companies. I work with both of them. I feel like this is as good as it gets for us.
What ways that we got more fishing?
And why we only have two bidders?
Because of the nature of the project, it's complex. There are lots of parts. And, you know, I talked to some prime bidders that I usually work with. A lot of the companies, they want to be able to come in and do a chunk of the work themselves. Brett Smith Company with the Saunders lot, they can do the grading. They did the retaining wall. They did the paving. Then they sub out the concrete. They sub out the landscaping. Here, they told me, there's nothing for us to do. You know, we don't take on projects like that where we're just, you know, having to orchestrate and manage nothing but subcontractors. That's the primary, that, and then the risk element. Because like I said, we had one that put hours into preparing a bid and at the end just did not want to assume the risk.
These are things I'm starting to get control of. I just want to add that. As I was saying, we go way back. We're here. Got to finish it. Option one. Oh, you guys. Okay, all right, cool.
So,
Okay.
here, so, I mean, we have the benefit of having multiple bids, right, that we can contrast with each other, right? And so just looking through the two bids, you see wide fluctuations on some of the line items, right? Up to like 50% and a couple $100,000, right? So why do we go with the company that needs to, you know, like just traffic control, right? $225,000 for ground construction, but roadworks and things they can do it for half. And so are we using that as leverage to negotiate, right? Like, you know, whether you get doing that so special, that's gonna cost $110,000 more than a competing bids for the exact same project.
I think the bids, and based on conversations with other bidders who did not submit, I think they're reasonably close overall. What one contractor chooses to put in one item versus another, that's just how they have prepared their bid, how they want to mitigate potentially their risk on certain things. nothing jumps out to me as, ooh, that's really outrageous. Even compared to roadworks. I saw in the lights, it's over $100,000 difference, but then Rouse lower by more than that on one of the other papers. I can't remember which one, but
It's really hard to start looking into item by item because every contractor works their bids differently. One thing they noted was for the traffic control. I mean, you got a lot of risk in traffic control. You're dealing with pedestrians, day to day along the street. You're also dealing with an off-site detour, one-way traffic that you're having to do throughout most of the duration of construction. But when you have some items in there for lump sum like grading or traffic control, those are types of items where they can kind of put that, what they consider the risk portion of their bid, they can kind of fit that in there. But what one contractor does for another, it's really hard to negotiate line item by line. We try, but it's very hard to do that. Because at the end of the day, you got to go with the low bid, or you've got to look at modifying the scope to bring the cost down. And so when we looked at it, most of the items that we would have thought to modify either couldn't be modified or they were major items of the contract that were part of the public involvement, would create questions as to why that wasn't getting done with the project.
And so, I mean, we're trying to do this, so let's be clear. But I am chagrined about the huge increase in price, especially on some of the things I've loved, right, with the lights, like, and if the contractor is already managing subcontractor to that lighting, in, why are they saying they're not comfortable with, our public works team doing that, right? They're already managing a third party. And so what's the difference and why the resistance? Because if we have some contract language that like you can change the scope, right? Or like as the project goes on, if you get some change orders, if we find a better alternative. Right, but the contractor right now is saying like, yeah, not gonna consider that, right? We're on the hook for the full amount. But are we, through the course of a project like this, like, not just this project, but I guess my question is more generic. Do we have the ability to, through change orders, modify this scope, as more information becomes available?
yes, potentially, yes, but after award, and the question about why not our public works. So the big ticket item, the poles, fixtures, the work requires an electrician. We don't have that on staff. So it would be another contractor, electric utilities, whether we procure or they bid that out. And then it's just another contractor that now our contractor, the prime, has to coordinate with and keep everything moving.
We have a whole electric department. I would say we have no electrician.
So Marty talked to me about this, so I just wanted to mention that he was saying the issue, part of the issue is also that the risk of having something off by even an eighth of an inch, our electric folks would not be able to connect the lights to the poles. He was saying.
There's a benefit to having it all integrated.
Yes.
One party's responsible for it. But to the question, usually on deductive change, I mean, it's usually not good for us to do a deductive change. We don't, I mean, you guys have the history on this, but say they'll give you credit for 200,000, you probably should get a credit for 300,000, but you never
Right.
get.
You're not gonna get the exact, you're not gonna get the value that you would like.
And we've had these conversations. I just want to make sure that you're aware, we have had these conversations. We talked about with them for at least a week. That's why we.
Listen, this is more of a, I am chagrined that every project that we bid comes in millions over our system, right? Which means that either we are terrible at estimating or, our contractors, the other contractors that do bids, take advantage of the situation.
Hey, my resurfacing last January was way low. I mean, mine is-
This was an engineer estimate, not internal. Right. To your point,
But, it's a strength, right? And so it doesn't seem to get any better. And we are these stewards of the taxpayers' money, right? And it's just, something that we have to live with. I'm afraid that it's definitely something that is a sore spot for me.
Sure.
Right, and, you know, I'm asking to become staff friendly, it sounds like you're doing whatever you can, but you gotta try it out, like, how we get more bids, like, we just mentioned, or how to get better estimates, right, and we don't get this paper shock every single time that we do a project.
But I can't speak to the other projects you're referring to. For transportation, I think this is an outlier. This is a unique project.
So
I was gonna
basically,
speak really quickly and just tell you that there might be, and I'm putting the cart before the horse on this, admittedly, when it comes to other lots of funding that's been allocated. But perhaps there's an opportunity at a later date to reallocate some of the Commerce Street funding to this project. Not only is that not, and again, I don't want to do mission creep because I do want to speak directly to this project, but I was going to say we might be able to recoup some of the overrun on this cost. That's for another day, obviously, because that's opening an entire can of worms. I just wanted to say that I'm in 100% support as much as I am disillusioned with the price tag. But I do just want to say that it was, we're heading toward 11, almost a dozen years since a group of us pitched the downtown plan that has become one of what are 4 or 5 major pillars when you go on the website. I will say that I just looked in my email and I received an email from Ms. Cox in February of 2019. So we're working this coming February. That would be 7 years when I received your invitation for me to serve on that steering committee. I want to say that when it comes to just, if you don't mind me nitpicking a small thing, forgive me, I am.
Sure, we love it.
Here we go, here we go. No, this is so trivial that it's self-deprecating humor I'm using. I see here in the goal, and I noticed this on a Saturday morning over my coffee and immediately poured a second cup. This goal says transform Salem Street into a premier regional public space. I want to point out that in the downtown plan approved in 2019, it specifically states on page 27, the premier public space in the region, not just a regional public space. So what we envisioned in this town over a decade ago is what we're about to hopefully say yes to, finally get things that are tangible underway. And I just want to say that this seems, I see that, you know, perhaps doesn't necessarily match with some of the other priorities, but when it comes to, you know, downtown as our economic development team, I'll never forget Economic Development Director Joanna Helms saying that when companies come in to town, whether they're somewhere else in the nation or international, the first thing they regularly say to her is, show me your downtown. And so I think this is our front porch. This is our calling card. It's the crown jewel for our town. And I think it does more than just make for a pretty downtown. I think it gives people a place to feel like they belong.
So you all think that we just award to one contractor, that one general contractor go find all those subcontractors to finish this complicated project is a better way than we break down all those items and just let each contractor to bid for each item. You all think is the first, the prior is better?
Yes. And for multiple reasons, not just one, that it's they kind of own the right of way while they're building the project. They're responsible for all safety. So bringing in a third party unnecessarily not only creates the possibility of you have 2 contractors blaming each other for things that go wrong, but it also puts the town in a position that if that second contractor causes any delay whatsoever, then now the prime contractor has damages against the town. So keeping it under one umbrella where they're still responsible for all the contractors reduces town liability.
If I can emphasize one thing, I agree with you in terms of wanting to be efficient with our dollars. The last pitch, and this is why I'm offering a spirited perspective when it comes to why the expediency of developing this project is so important. Our downtown businesses make 1/3 or more of their entire annual revenue during the holiday season. And I just want you to know also, there's been a misconception for years, and I hope folks will hear this, that, downtown businesses are making money hand over fist. That is a low profit margin business down there. Those folks are not killing it. And so first off, I'll say I encourage residents to shop in our downtown because those are folks who often live, work and play here. But the expediency of the project, if we don't get this done come top of October, what's our current? We necessarily start chipping away at their viability and people will just go shop somewhere else.
When is the latest time we should start to make sure that project can finish right now, right?
That's why we put it on this way. Because we don't have a lot of time. We need to start January. And real quick, to not lose that point, because I think that does speak to the estimation. And to your point, Councilman Segerman, of the estimate and the risk that Adam and Chris talked about, the compressed nature of the project added to the risk. That's an investment that this council made and prioritized for those businesses. But knowing we could have said, okay, do it in 18 months, and we probably would have gotten more bidders, and it might not have been a different price, but we think we would have had some more competition. But there was definitely more risk because of the compressed nature. And so recognizing that's an investment that this council is making and a decision we're making to prioritize those businesses in downtown to get it done.
And I don't want to go I could talk for too long about this, but last point I will make regarding the importance of accomplishing this project with a bidder who is accountable in a compressed timeline. It's because some folks may say, and there are times when a business closes. There are circumstances that impact that, and there are times when perhaps a few businesses may run into an issue. But I will say that the Downtown Development Association, it's dated data now. I want to say it's probably 15 years old, but it pointed to, I'll just cut to the chase. You remember a lot of the stuff where if you essentially you're trying to protect the herd, and if you lose, what was it? It was 10 or 15% of your businesses in a downtown district over a 12 to 18 month period, the probability of losing the next 10 to 20%, it shoots up dramatically, exponentially. So the point simply is we really need to make sure that, yeah, it'd be great to have an 18-month project and get every little nook and cranny perfect, but we've got to protect our businesses and our business community.
And for what it's worth, no bidders said, you know what, if we just made the contract time X, then we would be all in. No one said, that's not enough time. It's all the other elements.
Sounds like we did that runway. They're rotating again.
Yeah, I'll just concur with my colleagues and everything Shane said pretty well. In terms of expediency, we're already behind the ball here. We envisioned this in 2019, even before that, having frustrated the delays to get to this point, and delaying an additional year is something that's wrong. If for no other reason, then I have no faith that this is going to get a better price. Is what it is. None of us are happy to be here, but we got the bids. It's in front of us. We don't really have any other good options. I want to get this project done for the betterment of downtown.
Yeah.
This is not getting cheaper as we wait. It just does.
But we need to read the motion. Sure. This is where we're going to.
So the motion on the floor is to award a construction contract to Brown Construction Company with a 10% contingency added for construction budget, and to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement and approve the associated budget ordinance.
Second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, are unanimous. Done. Any other business?
No, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.